Hey there, I'm going to do a screencast. This is not going to be a short one. It's going to be kind of long, but I've got some stuff I want to show you all, a sort of recipe on how you might do collaborative writing with your students or with anybody and have that automatically published to your website on Reclaim Hosting. And it's really, really awesome. So there's two different pieces of software that we're going to take a look at. One of them is this. It's called Penflip. If you haven't heard of Penflip, Penflip is built on top of Git technologies. So if you're used to using GitHub or writing in Markdown or something like that, then you'll feel really at home with Penflip. Penflip is really awesome because it allows you to collaboratively edit documents, and it does complete version history. So you can have people editing multiple parts of a document and adding them in, and you can revert those changes if things need to be done to it, and you can build out entire books with it. It's a really awesome platform, and it's free. You can use it for free for public projects, very similar to GitHub in that regard. And it's got some really neat tricks up its sleeve. So Penflip is what we're going to use for the editing so that you can share a document and edit it and work in it. Oh, and I forgot to mention, it also allows you to publish to PDF, to ebook, to HTML if you want to, although we're going to use a different way of getting it on a website. But, you know, it's got a lot of really cool tools in there. So that's Penflip. The other thing that we're going to use is called Pico. So Pico is a flat file CMS, a content management system. And what does flat file mean? Well, flat file basically, when you've got like something like WordPress running, WordPress requires a database, and the database is actually what holds all of your content. The files are like your plugins and themes, but all of the posts that you're writing are going into a database. Whereas with Pico, those are actual files on the system. And so Pico actually reads Markdown files that are sitting in a folder and turns them into a website. So you can start to see where this gets interesting because Penflip writes Markdown files. And so what we're going to do is we're going to sync the two together so that you can write your Markdown files using the awesome Penflip editor and collaborating with people and have those automatically live on your Reclaim hosting space. So let's get started. First thing I need to do, and I'm just going to go here and log into the Reclaim hosting client area as myself, and I'll set up a subdomain for the website. I think that makes a lot of sense here. So I'm logged in here. We'll go into my cPanel account. Hey, look, throwback. So log into my timmyboy.com account, and we'll go here and we'll create a subdomain. And so I'm going to call this something like textbook. And let's choose my timowens.io domain because I kind of like that one. So the subdomain will be textbook.timowens.io. And the root of that, where the files will actually live, will just be in a textbook folder inside of public_HTML. So that's what the document root is. So go ahead and create that. It's thinking. And it's created. So we should be able to just take this address here and go there. And we've got a site. Doesn't look very exciting yet, but we're going to drop some files in there and it's going to be a lot of fun. So the next thing that we need to do is install Pico. Now they've got files that we can download here, and this will download an actual file, or we can clone it with GitHub. I actually like to use GitHub, and in fact, because of the way that you have to install Pico, it makes a lot of sense to do that because we're going to have to go to the command line. Don't be afraid. Do not be afraid. We got to go to the command line, but it's going to be okay. I'll walk you through this. So Pico is on GitHub here. So we're going to go here, and we can grab the clone URL right here on the right-hand side here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And I'll open up my terminal window. So on a Mac, this is under the Go utilities, and you can find terminal in here. If you've never used the terminal before, it's going to be okay. All you have to do is do SSH your username at your domain. So your username is going to be your FTP account. So if you have an FTP account from your original email with Reclaim Hosting, if you don't know this, you can just put in a support ticket with us and we'll help you out. But if I do that, it'll prompt you for a password and let you in. I've already got SSH keys, which is an entirely different topic, on there so that it doesn't actually prompt me for a password. But now you can see in the terminal on the left-hand side here, it says T. Owens at Ramones. Ramones is the name of the server. T. Owens is my username on that server. So I'm logged into the server here. So one command that's good to know is ls. ls will show you everything that's in your directory, and you can navigate around in them. So I've got a bunch of regular files here on the root directory. So we know that the site is inside of that public_HTML textbook folder. So to change to a different directory, you type cd and then a space and then the name of that directory. So if I type cd space public_HTML, now I'm in the public_HTML folder, and you'll see on the left-hand side of the terminal there, it actually updates every time and tells you what folder you're inside of. So I should be able to change the directory now to textbook. And now I'm in the textbook directory. If I do an ls, there's nothing there, which reflects very well with what is on the website right now, which is nothing. So let's put something in there. So cloning with GitHub. GitHub, it's very easy in Git. The way you do this is you just type git, git, clone, and then the URL. Now, if I left it just like this, just for a demonstration, let's leave it just like this. So git clone and then the URL, and you'll see what happens. There's one issue with this. All right, it cloned everything, so it basically installed the website, but let's do an ls and see what's in the folder now. Oh, it's in a Pico folder. So if you clone a GitHub URL, just git clone and then the URL, it creates a folder based on the name of that GitHub repository. We don't want that. We want it to go directly into the folder that we're already inside of, because otherwise people have to go to textbook.timowens.io/Pico. We don't want that. So I'm going to remove this folder. That command there, rm-rf, just means remove this folder. And so now I'm going to do something very similar. I'm going to go back and do git clone and then the whole URL. But at the end, I'm going to do a space, and then I'm going to type a period. And so what you can do when you're cloning a repository is after the URL, you can put a space and you can say what you want the folder to be named. In this case, the period actually means I don't want a folder at all. I want you to drop the files directly where I'm sitting. So if I hit enter now, same thing happens. We clone the URL, but now if I do a listing, I've got the actual files inside of my folder. So that's all it takes to grab those files. Now, the reason that we have to do all this from terminal instead of downloading the files and uploading them is not necessarily, I mean, to get the files on there, it's not too hard. But to install this, there's actually some information on the site. If we go back here and we scroll down, it says, here's what it takes to install. We need PHP, which the server is already running, and we need to use something called Composer. Now, what is Composer? I'll show you. They link to it here. Basically, the idea behind Composer is that for PHP applications, it allows certain dependencies to be defined within the application. It can say, all right, in order for my application to run, I also need you to download these 3 other things at this version. And so instead of them, downloading those dependencies and including them in their project, and then they might get too old or they've got to be the ones who keep up with it, they can point directly to those public projects. So things like jQuery, other JavaScript libraries, and just various libraries that are out there in packages. So in order to do this, you can see they give us 2 different commands. We know this is 2 commands because it's got that $sign there, basically saying when you're at the command prompt, type this part. So I'm just going to copy and paste these. So the first one's going to set up Composer. It's going to install Composer to this folder. All settings correct. You can see it's downloaded, installed, and set up. And then the second one is actually going to run the Composer file so that it can grab all those dependencies. So you can see as it's running, it's going to install the dependencies for Pico. So it's just 2 commands. It's not terribly complex, but this does have to run. Otherwise, you'd have those Pico files in there, but the dependencies for the project wouldn't be inside of your folder. So you can see they're installing Parse Down Extra. That's one library that they've got. A couple others that are in there. And this should take just a few minutes. It always depends on how many libraries they're trying to install, but it doesn't take terribly long to get those installed. All right, so we've got everything installed in there, and I think we're good to go. Let's go ahead and go back to the site and take a look at it. So we're at textbook.timowens.io. And there we are. So Pico is installed on the website. And you can see it's got several pages in here, and they put a nice little demo page in here that sort of explains the file structure. So there's a content sample directory that's inside of our Pico installation, and that has various Markdown files in there and subpages and things like that. And so really generating our site is just a matter of getting these files in the right folders. So I'm not going to use terminal anymore for this. Go ahead and hit exit there and get out of that. I'm actually going to open up my FTP client. That way we can actually look at the files and folders a little bit easier. All right. So same thing, I'm going to log in here to my account. And we'll go to public_HTML. And textbook. So here you can see all the folders and files that Pico installs. And there's this content sample folder, and that's actually the demo content that's on this website. If I expand this folder, we'll see in there, there's an index file, there's a subfolder with index and page, and so this folder structure matches quite well with what they've got in their demo there. So I could actually go in here. Let's, for example, let's look at the index page. So the index is written in Markdown. And you can see Markdown has these hashtags in it. If you don't know much about Markdown, when we flip over to Penflip, get that flip over to Penflip, we'll look a little bit more at what Markdown looks like. So let's just make a change in here. So welcome to Tim's Pico. And I'll just save that and go back here and refresh. And the heading right there, welcome to Tim's Pico, refreshed in there. So that's what a flat file system is, basically. We're editing those files directly on the server, and those files relate to what shows up on the website. And you can see you don't have to get too nitty-gritty with HTML. Markdown is actually a quicker way of writing and doing all of that formatting without having to know, well, how do I make things bold, indented, all that kind of stuff. So that's great and all, but I don't really want to use an FTP client, and I certainly don't want to have to work with students and have to show them how to use FTP, and all of my changes wouldn't really be saved. I wouldn't be able to go back and look at those changes if I just edited them directly on the server. So we want to do something a little bit different. So let's flip over to Penflip and take a look at what that looks like. So you can sign up for a free account in here. I actually already have one, so I'm going to go ahead and log in. All right, so I'm logged in, And you can see I can start a new project, or I can invite collaborators, look at other projects, and do those various things. So let's start a new project for this. And it can either be a single document, or for this, it's going to make a lot more sense to have it be a collection of files, an entire book. So we give it a name. I'm going to call this Tim's Textbook. Book style, I'm not quite sure what they do with that. Probably has to do a little bit with the styling on their end, but we're not going to use their styling anyway. And we'll go ahead and this be a public project. If you want to do private projects, that requires a paid Penflip account. So if you're thinking of doing something with students, but you don't necessarily want it to all be public, then you can get a paid account with them. And they're very reasonable and a great company to support. But we'll just make ours public for now. So it's going to go ahead and prepare it. And then it's going to drop us into the editor that they have here. All right, you're working on the master version. This project will be updated when you save. Great. So you can see this editor looks a lot nicer than just editing those files directly on the server. We've still got the Markdown formatting, and you'll get used to some of that, but we do also have a visual editor up here that'll kind of help you and your students along, especially if you're not used to Markdown formatting. So the idea with Markdown is that, if you wanted to do something like bold, instead of having to know the HTML tag for it, you could just do that. And so regular text is just written like that, not indent, italics. Lord, it was escaping me for a minute. I was like, it's an I word. It's an I. It has the letter I. Italics are just a single asterisk. Headings. Oops. So headings, you actually put these hashtags at the beginning of the word for the various heading types. So if you have the top level, first heading, second heading, you can do it that way. And they've also got a really good help guide up here that will actually walk you through some of this. So headers, block quotes, lists, it'll tell you all of the various formatting. This is something that can be a tiny bit intimidating, but once you start using Markdown, you'll find you can type really well formatted documents a lot faster. And so what's also nice here is that I can preview this document and look at what it looks like when it's nice and formatted. So now all of my Markdown is gone and I have just formatting there, and switch back into edit mode. I can save these changes. And here's what's great about this. This will show me what things I changed in the document. So it highlights those. If I go back here, let's say I had removed some stuff. So let's say I took out that. Then when I go to save, it crosses that out. So I can see all the changes I made for that. And I can type something in here. So I can actually update this and say what changes I was making before I saved them. So I could go back and see those changes in real time. So before I save this as well, go to share, I can actually allow collaborators to join in with this. And so I could share just this chapter. I could share the whole project with them. And they could actually go in there and start working on their own version and push those changes up to me once I approve them. So it's a great way for them to be working on the same copy and for you to be able to pull in those changes on the fly. And so they can do that with the free Penflip account as well. And so it works really well. Similar to Google Docs, but different in some ways because everybody has their own version that they're working on. And then they're all pushing the changes that they make back to you. And so you can approve specific changes instead of having to change your entire document every time one person changes something. So how are we going to connect this to textbook.timowens.io? Well, this is where it gets really exciting for me because Penflip in order to do all this versioning, so let me save this real quick, and I'll say, made a few demo changes to about page. Let's save that in there. So at first glance, nothing really interesting has happened, but let's click up here. Let's go back to the main page for this textbook. So you'll see it says updated by Timmy Boy less than a minute ago. And I can view the history. The history is also in the right here. So this is keeping track of all of the changes that I make. And I could actually click on any of those changes and see exactly what was changed and when. So I removed 2 lines there. I added some demo text. And we could have a discussion about those changes, which is great as well. This is very similar to GitHub. If you're used to using GitHub and version tracking, that's very similar to that. And so I think it's a really interesting way of collaborating on documents with other people because you can have discussions around changes. They can make changes that you then approve. There's a lot of options there for how you manage that. And so, and because this is all driven by the Git technology, we can actually connect it to our website pretty easily by cloning this textbook, same way that we cloned Pico. So now you know why I was using the GitHub version of Pico, because I wanted you to start to get used to what it means to clone a project. And so we're going to clone this textbook. And so if I go back in to my textbook, I'm just going to go into the settings area in the top right here. You can also get to it from the editor, I believe, in the top left. But this goes to my project settings. And you'll notice one of my options here is Git Access. So it gives me my clone URL. This is the URL that I need to clone the project. So I'm going to go and grab this. Just use the regular old HTTP URL. And so we've got to go back into terminal, but we're not afraid anymore, right? We're just going to do SSH, timmyboy.com, and get in there. And we're total masters at terminal now, right? You've been practicing. You know how this works. Did I use too many M's? Oh my goodness. Y'all are never going to let me let that down. I use too many M's in my own name, and that's why people don't love me. Change directory. We're going to go to public_HTML/textbook. And so now, I mentioned before that we have this content sample directory, which is what's serving the website right now. We are going to change that. We're going to clone this textbook into this website. So let's do that first. And this time we're actually going to let it create a directory. We're not going to use that period on the end. So we'll just do git clone and then the URL that they gave us for the textbook. And so what this should do is it should grab everything from that textbook and put it in a folder called Tim's-textbook. Let's do it. Done. So if I list the files and folders now, I've got Tim's textbook as a directory. If I change to that directory, look at that, I've got text files in there. And I could actually go back to my FTP client and refresh the page here and see them here as well. And so let's open up the about.txt file. You can see there's exactly the same stuff that I edited previously in Penflip is now on my website. Now what we have to do in order to get Tim's-textbook, this folder, to be served up by Pico, is they've got this configuration file, and they name it .template on the end. We want to remove that .template part, so it's just config.php. And then let's open it up. So everything's commented out by default because these are all the default things that are in there. And we can change any of these defaults if we'd like. And so we want to change the default content directory. It's down here under content. If I remove those 2 slashes from the beginning, you can see I can change content sample to anything. So I'm going to change this to Tim's-textbook. and we'll save it. Automatically updates. Let's check. Let's take a look at our site and look at how awesome it is. Oh, what the heck is going on? There's nothing there. Why would that be? Well, I'll tell you why it is, actually, because I know. The reason that's happening is because our awesome textbook folder is full of text files. So the thing about Penflip is that it writes Markdown, but it writes them as .txt files. Now Penflip can actually read Markdown files, .md files, but by default it doesn't create them. It creates .text files. So Pico is only going to read them if it knows that it's a Markdown file, and that's known by using the .md tag. And so just for example, just to show you that this does work, if I changed .txt to .md on that chapter 1 file, I should be able to go up here and say textbook.timmins.io/chapter 1, and there's the example text of chapter 1 on there. And so this is actually rendering. It's just that Pico needs these to be Markdown files. Now I'm going to change this back for a minute so that we're right in line with everything else that's in here. And so we need to go back to Penflip and make a few changes in order for this to look correct. Let's go back into here to our editor here. And so, you know, we can leave this stuff in for now, or if you highlight over any of these, you can actually delete them. So actually, let's delete all these chapters. We can delete those. I'll leave the about page in there for now. Maybe we'll edit it a little bit later. But I'm going to create a new chapter in here. They call them chapters, I guess, because we chose it as a book. But I'm actually going to call this index.md. So we know when we're writing that this will be the index page for the website. And so my heading, I am going to call this a welcome to Tim's textbook. And I might say something here like we're totally writing this using Penflip and pushing those changes to reclaim hosting. It's so great. And if I want to make this a link, I could highlight it and link it there. Let's do that. And check it out. That's what Markdown looks like. So let's practice this on our own. Here, reclaim hosting. So you surround the word that you want to be linked with brackets. And then in parentheses, you type the URL. That's all it looks like. So let's see what that looks like if we preview it. All right, yeah, that'll make a great home page for our website. So I'm going to go ahead and save this change. And we'll just say, let's say, add a great intro to the home page. So we've saved it, and that's great. So let's go back to our FTP client, and let's refresh here. Oh, wait a second. This still has chapters in here. I don't have my index file. Well, why is that? So even though we grabbed this folder using Git, it doesn't know that any changes are made yet. We're not actually syncing. So there's a command that we have to run when we're in this folder. So we have to be inside the Tim's textbook folder, and then it's just 2 words. It's Git Pull. So if we type those 2 words, this tells Git, are there any changes? Go ahead and do them. So check out what it did. It deleted 3 folders. It added, or 3 files. It added an index.md file to it. Now if I refresh in my FTP client, or maybe I have to refresh in here. Now you can see this matches up exactly with what we were doing in Penflip. And if I go to my site, since it's an index.md file, it should show up on the home page. And there it is. Welcome to Tim's textbook. So you can see it's very easy to do that. All I have to do is Git Pull, but I don't want to have to log into the server and run a command every time that I'm making changes on Penflip. And so what we need to do is automate that process. So the last thing that I'm going to show you to automate this, we need to go back into my cPanel account. And I'm going to go back to the home page of it. There's something in cPanel called Cron Jobs. So Cron Jobs are when you want to set up a command to run in an automated fashion. So the easiest way to find stuff in cPanel, I think, is to just search for it. So CRON. Cron, and you'll see it right down there, Cron Jobs. I'm going to open this up. And so this is how a cron job works. You set up what time of day, what hour, what minute you want it to run, and how often, basically. And so, and they've got some common ones in here, like, do you want it to run every minute, every 5 minutes, once a day, once a week? You can select those in there. So let's say, for example, that we want this to run, like every 5 minutes or so. We don't expect to make too many changes, but, you can make that longer if you want or shorter. You don't want to have it hitting the server too often, though. It's not good practice. And so you can see what the format here looks like. Every weekday of every month, every day, every hour. So these asterisks mean every single one of those. And then every 5 minutes is typed with that asterisk /5. And so I could change it in here to every 10 minutes. So I find the interface here to add these pretty simple to use. So let's change it to, well, let's just do every minute, just for example. That way it'll update a lot faster. And then we tell it what command we want it to run. And so I've got the example command in here. And I'm going to actually paste this in. And let's go through it. Let me scroll back to the beginning. So this is the command. So it's going to run as if we were in a SSH shell prompt already. So we want it to run a shell command. And then this -c says, what command do you want it to run? And so then in quotes, we'd say we want it to change to a certain directory. And that directory is going to be /home /towens /public_html /timowens.io, and then I need to change this part because this was from an earlier testing /textbook /tims-textbook. So we want it to go right into that folder where we have our Penflip repository, and then these two ampersands mean we also want you to run another command, and that command is going to be, here we're using user bin git. That user bin might not be required, but for the purposes of this, it makes it a little easier. It's calling the git command. So git pull -q origin master. And so it's a little bit of extra text than if we had just logged into the shell prompt, but what's great is this whole command, and I'll put it up here on the screen so you can see the whole thing if you want to pause the video and actually write it down or add it alongside me. But this is going to run every minute automatically. We don't need to be on the server. So I'm going to go ahead and add that cron job in there. So now our site should be getting those updates automatically. And I could go back in here and edit the how often it runs and that kind of stuff. But just as a demo, so let's go back now to our page. And so I'm just going to make some changes here. We've synced it up using Git and a cron job on the server. So all of our changes automatically update on the site. Booyah! All right, let's save that. More flair. So we've made changes within the next minute. Oh, sorry, let me grab a little drink. So within the next minute, that website should update on the server, and we'll go back and check in a little bit. We can add more files in here. We can even create subdirectories. So you can create a new folder and put files inside of it. So we just want to make sure that all of our files end in .md so that it plays well with Pico. The other thing that you'll notice if I go here is that there's no menu. What if we wanted to change the theme? Well, that's pretty easy to do as well. So Pico, if I go back to their site, let's go to the Pico wiki. So they've got various plugins and themes that you can use. And so you can look at some of that information. It also uses a templating engine called Twig. And so, oh Lord, my computer's going really slow. Let me go back to their main website. Let's click on this Twig templates so you can get some information about this. So if you wanted to build your own template, this is the templating engine that they use. It just allows you to put in certain variables and have things show up. So it's a certain way of writing themes for Pico if you wanted to get that into it. But they've got a lot of great documentation in here that talks about how to do things like changing the theme, adding plugins in there, and creating the content and how that all works. So definitely take a look at the docs. Let's switch over to the website and refresh. And if this automatically worked, then we're going to have a second paragraph in there. Oh, has it been a minute? I was so ready to jump for joy, and now nothing. I wonder if I jumped the gun. Or I wonder if I typed in the folder wrong when I was setting up that cron job. Let's go back to it. Home, T. Owens, public _ HTML, Tim Owens. Oh, I did type the folder in wrong. Tim. It's just public _ HTML / textbook. We don't actually go into the timowens.io folder. See? Always double check your work. All right. I'll make sure to fix that for the folder that we put up there earlier. All right, so that's going to run, hopefully somewhat soon, and this will update. I doubt it's already run. No, we'll give it a little bit more time in here, and then it'll start working. But yeah, let me show you really quickly how to change the theme, because that's not too terribly difficult either, and that'll be a good test. If I go back to their wiki, and let's go to themes. So a couple people have written themes for it. One that I was playing with the other day is this Bootstrap theme. If you've never used Bootstrap, it's a pretty decent theme that allows you to build out websites pretty nicely. And so they've got a GitHub repository for this theme. You all are total pros now at Git, aren't you? So I'm inside the Tim's textbook directory. I'm going to change the directory, and to go up one, it's just 2 dots. Another trick for you. So if we look at all the files in Pico, there's a themes folder there. So we want to change the directory to go inside the themes folder. And if we look at what's in there, there's just the default theme that comes with it. So I'm going to do git clone and that theme. That'll create a folder for the theme and put it in there. Now the name of the theme is Pico-Bootstrap. So if I switch in my FTP client and I open up that config file, we can look and see there's a whole section on the theme. So we want to change the default theme to be the name of that folder, Pico-Bootstrap. So now that that's uncommented here, that will update on the site. And so let's refresh our page here. Oh my gosh, we're awesome. So check it out. Not only did we change the theme, but we've got a second paragraph there. Now updates are absolutely syncing from Penflip into our site. So that basically wraps it up for us. There's a whole lot more you can do with Pico and Penflip as well. I mean, just start playing around with that. But I think it's a really cool recipe to be able to use these two completely different technologies and to be able to do something really awesome and allow for a really powerful way to collaborate with a bunch of editors, whether they be students or journal editors or whatever it might be. So that's all. Thanks for watching.